Hello everyone, Trophy Wine Hunter. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm doing a review of a sparkling or champagne wine that most people are familiar with. This is the Veuve Clicquot Rosé Non-Vintage. Veuve Clicquot is a great story. I really support it. You can look at their story. I went through that story and their history in other videos, which I'll put at the end of this video and also mention in the comment section. Essentially, Veuve Clicquot Ponsardin Veuve means widow, so it was made famous by the widow, Madame Clicquot Ponsardin. She, in the 1800s, her husband died when she was very young. She had a choice whether you take over the winery or just sell it. Most people wanted to sell it because in the Napoleon times, the code prohibited women from working and voting, except there was an exception if their husbands passed away. So it was a very male-dominated society, and everything was against her. But she somehow struggled. She made great connections as she befriended the Russian Empire at that time when no one did. They were very appreciative, and therefore she got to sell into the Russian market. She made a number of innovations. For example, she invented the riddling table, which is now used for champagne, and she was the first producer of rosé in 1818. So pre-1818, rosé champagne was created by just adding elderberries to regular wine, and that's kind of made it had the color. And she was the one who innovated and made the technique which we now use today with rosé, which I'm going to go through. She created a technique where you actually put wine or red wine into the champagne, so that and to make the rosé. So that's essentially how rosé wine is made today. Two base wines. There's a base wine, which is regular champagne, and in this situation, they usually use the same blend that they use for their regular champagne, their non-vintage champagne. That contains 50 to 60 different crus. With that, they have a red wine base also. So it's kind of complicated. I'm going to go all over the place here, but in the blend of this rosé, there's 50% Pinot Noir, 30% Chardonnay, and 20% Pinot Meunier, which is a regular standard blend for champagne. However, added to this is 12% red wine, and the small amount of red wine gives it the color. So they're individually, the red wine and the white wine components of this rosé are individually fermented and aged and things like that, and then they're blended together at the end. And the key is that the blending is very key in terms of your experience, and also the red wine is also very key to this. You can't just use any lousy wine. With Veuve Clicquot, they produce 3 different rosés. I think they produce La Grande Dame, they produce a vintage, and then they produce this vintage. With all 3 of their different rosés, they use different red wines based on what's needed for that mix. The red wine base that's used for this champagne comes from Vodayance, and it's a little bit lighter, more cherry, strawberry aromas. And then that blend is then bottled and undergoes secondary fermentation, which creates the bubbles for the champagne. The dosage on this wine, which is the mixture of wine and sugar that's added to the wine to make that effervescence and secondary fermentation, is about 9 grams per liter, which is in the higher end. So as an example, Dom Perignon would probably be lower at around 4. Wine like Ace of Spades would be up at 13. So probably a lot of the Cristal, I think it's around 9 also. So it's a really complicated, even though it seems like a base wine or it's just their regular non-vintage wine, it's a very complicated wine. And I love the story of Veuve Clicquot. I think a lot of times people disrespect them because just like Caymus, they're successful, they're mass marketed, but that doesn't take away from their story. That doesn't take away from their excellence. And I don't know, in this world, I think sometimes people just get upset at really excellence and they get tired of excellence, but they're really good at what they do, and they've never hurt anyone. It's a great story. They produce a great champagne that is somewhat affordable still. And this, just because it's non-vintage doesn't mean it's not good. Again, it comes from a blend of 50 or 60 different crus, and 45% of this is made up of reserve wine. So this is no slouch in terms of the product. They put a lot into it, and anytime you're drinking this is going to be quality. Let's taste and smell this wine. On the aroma, you get strawberries, cherries, and good acidity. You get a degree of alcohol in there too, so you know you're not drinking just juice. But the other thing is I want to note is look at the color of this. Aesthetically, it's so pleasing. I find sparkling rosés and champagnes too light, and I just like the color. That intensity of color, that darker salmon pink. I really think it's aesthetically pleasing. What I love about Veuve Clicquot Rosé is there's no hiding around. The intensity of flavors is up front. You don't have to find it. It's strawberries, rhubarb, red cherries. And then on the end, a little bit of yeastiness to it, like a kind of a breadiness to it. But it's the intensity of the flavors and the vibrancy of the acidity, which I really love. This is a great summer sipper, but also it has enough weight in its body that it pairs really well with light appetizers with salmon. I think it would go spectacular, like a barbecued salmon on the grill. That would go spectacular. The great thing with these house champagnes is that they're made in a certain style, and they're made by expert blenders who try to make the same style or the same champagne year after year. So it doesn't really matter when you bought it. The rosé should taste the same or relatively same. Again, one thing that a lot of people say is, well, can you age these rosés? And in fact, what I've read is that you can probably age rosé champagnes longer than regular non-vintage champagnes. And it makes sense because there's more red wine juice in this rosé than compared to a regular champagne, and therefore red wines generally age longer than white wine. So that makes sense to me. Again, not much I can say wrong about this. Is a spectacular product for what it is. It's still relatively inexpensive for a rosé champagne. There's some magnificent vintage rosé champagnes, but they get up there. So I'm going to rate it 90 points, and I think I might actually like this better than their regular champagne. This is really a great product. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Until next time, happy drinking.